kind of in a people, planet, profit kind of perspective, is to educate and promote sustainability wherever we can. We have ambitious goals to be carbon neutral, but primarily our focus is around waste, trying to get as close as we can to a zero landfill waste type of situation with all of the print materials that we do. So this is kind of an example of what we do from that perspective, and we're really excited to have you here today. To my right is our panel, and we'll give them the opportunity to introduce themselves. To my left is Brian Hart, who is a long time, and that does not mean old, that means experienced, old, large format print expert.
I will. Thank you very much, and thanks for inviting me again to moderate the panel. As you can tell, we've got a good host of people to go ahead and hold this conference with, but I thought I'd take a second and talk about the purpose of the meeting. Is kind of really is to demonstrate our leadership for the sustainability and prove we have a metric-driven culture and focus on emerging technologies, and to educate our customer bases that desire to work in more sustainable fashion. So the goal here is to go ahead and introduce our panel and kind of keep that in mind. And I think SuperGraphics has done a great job of showing new technologies and new ways to work, and also gave an opportunity to go ahead and prove the fact that they're a metric-driven culture. So I want to start with our panelists up on top here, and I think one of the things I wanted to point out, which is, I think this is kind of a 2.0. Of course, this is our second summit here, but this has the opportunity to be a unique panel discussion because we have a representative of pre-planning and architecture, we have a representative for the venue, and then we have a representative about recycling. So why don't we start with our first guest, Peter Muller. Yeah, with Gensler. So everybody knows Gensler. Take it away.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for having me, Reed and team. This is really great. My name's Peter. I'm a Seattle local, born and raised in Ballard, Beavers. And I work for Gensler. We're a global architecture and design firm. I am currently sitting out of our San Francisco office, but for the last 6 months, but recently transferred down there. But previously started in our Seattle office, was here for about 5 years. And at Gensler, I've served as the Global Brand Design Resilience Practice Area Leader. Say that 10 times fast. It's basically just fancy talk for sustainability lead for the brand group. Brand is our experiential graphic design, signage, and wayfinding practice area. And I also sit on the SCGD Sustainability Committee. Was a former SCGD chapter chair for Seattle, and just always looking for opportunities to take our sustainability knowledge outside of our silos and bring it out to the masses as much as possible. So it's one of the great things about SCGD. I'm a Living Future accredited professional through International Living Future Institute. At one point held an EMV-SP through International or Institute for Sustainable Infrastructure. Love all things sustainability and design and branding and Seattle, and I'm super excited to be here.
Super. So our next presenter is Christy Briggs, and she's with the Seahawks. So tell us about life.
Christy, I am the sustainability manager at Lumen Field and for the Seahawks. And unlike Peter, with all of the fancy education in sustainability, I had zero. And in 2018, I like to joke, voluntold to take over our sustainability program, which was an NFL leading, industry leading program. And so I have self-taught, learned, grown our program over the time. In 2002, I was asked to sit on the board for Green Sports Alliance, which is an organization that brings together sports and entertainment in the sustainability realm, sharing best practices. And in this last year, we have begun our journey to zero waste. We were very much a zero waste facility before it was a thing of certification. We had a little drop with an influx of events and just getting our system back up to that speed. We are there. We are hoping this year we have attained our pre-certification for True Zero and hope to have the full certification this year. A little bit of my background.
That sounds great. And then our last speaker, which he promised me he'll answer anything. So
Most of it.
Steve Sutta, who is representing the recycling side. You want to fill us in on your life?
Sure, I own Green Planet 21. We're the second largest private recycler in North America. Really a junk dealer. That's what it comes down to. You guys make it, and we have to try and figure out what's to be done. Notable achievements: we took Frito-Lay to zero landfill back in 2005. At each one of their facilities in the western U.S., about 100,000 costs. They estimate that the focus on waste saved them literally $500,000. Facility was 13 facilities. We took IKEA to zero landfill. 7, 8, something like that. And, those guys were much quicker. It took about a year for the California. The Procter & Gamble's Oxnard, Charmin and Bonnie Paper. And the key element that overrode that all was buy-in from senior management. With Frito, we had the chairman of PepsiCo tell the folks at Sun Chips down in Rancho Cucamonga that, look, you don't have to recycle, you can find another job. And it was amazing how everyone just kind of got with the program. And at a slightly different level, we didn't get that buy-in at the international level, but at the national level, we got that buy-in with IKEA. And then the mill manager, who was a guy at Procter & Gamble who invented Bounty, actually. He and I were personal friends, so he kind of put his foot on everyone's neck, and everyone decided to get before. And that's how it works, because people don't like change. I don't know how Obama ever got elected on it. A motto of change. I mean, seriously, I have a hard time changing my phone. But, I can go off on stories on that kind of stuff. But nonetheless, the big thing is get people to change their habits and understand what is sustainable and what is not. And paper is a very sustainable sort of thing. I've been doing this 51 years. I started on the paper side. I was the third guy with a college degree.
That sounds like a direct answer to my next question, which is, so you answered the 51-year question of how long you've been on your sustainable journey. Christy, how about you? How about
8 years.
About 6.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, Steve, how did you get started on that journey?
It was I was working at Western Neon over here in DeSoto. Shout out to Andre Dillon, the Western Neon team. And at the time was kind of looking to make a sort of a career pivot more to the design side of things and position myself as a project manager. And to kind of like fill out what that meant for me, wanted to focus on sustainability as well. And so I looked at some organizations that I wanted to align myself with professionally, and opened up the books and started reading and learning and getting into it. But I think it was very natural for me. I think it's just sort of our responsibility as humans on this earth to be doing that. And so it was just something I wanted to do and naturally did, and it turned into something. And I was just kind of tapped on the shoulder eventually to become the lead, which I thought was kind of funny at the time, because I just thought that everyone had all these sustainability accreditations, and they're like, no, you have a lot of them, you should have this role. Okay. But it's been fun. Yeah.
That's great. And Christy, how about that same question?
It was being voluntold, and I don't do anything halfway, so jumped in and figured it out, and here I am. But to Peter's point, we have a responsibility as humans. That really is it.
That's great. Steve, come on, tell me something new.
I've always been a bunny hugger. And I can sell anything. It didn't matter what it was when I was 8 or when I was 18. So I came out here, I might as well sell recycling. And one day I had kids and I realized I actually had to make money in this thing. It's long and short of it.
That sounds great. So I wanted to touch a little bit with each one of you, a little bit about trends that you see and the difference in the trends between 2024 and 2025. So, see?
Paper or plastic, I mean, where are we going with this thing? Because I mean, as I told you, wind me up, I can go for a while. So let's talk about paper. Paper, it's all market driven now. The markets are developed. Anything that's pretty much paper, you can recycle. It's just where the pricing is. The model has gone more and more to charge fee for service because the commodity value will no longer sustain it. On plastic, it's almost, unless you're baling it in reasonable lots, and you have something like center cut, you have an HDPE or an LDPE or a PET, you're going to pay to get rid of it. When you put the freight and the rest of it in. And I see more lying this year than last year from the plastics industry in our neighborhoods about what the recycling rates are on plastic. They're claiming 10%, and I'll eat that chair if it's 10%. It's not possible with all the permutations.
So, Christy, what about that same question?
So in our industry, it's reuse. Reuse is becoming the new next best thing. A lot of stadiums went to fully compostable in everywhere that they could, cups, and now reuse is making its way. Cups is really the big thing. We do have a reusable cup. If you enjoy a concert in our WAMU theater, you will use a reusable cup for your mixed drink. We are looking at bringing it into our club level. Some other places that have it, Moda Center has gone to fully reusable cups in their whole arena. And so it's the idea that instead of being a single use, we can use it multiple times. I think we have some ways to go on it, but it is definitely, we started talking about it in 2020. And I told our senior leadership 5 years from now, it's going to be a thing that people are doing. And we're in 2025 and it is a thing that people are doing. It needs to be done right. And I think that it can be twofold. It can be a fan experience upgrade because it's a better cup than holding a flimsy plastic cup. But it is also very environmentally friendly. They say it has 5 to 25 uses in some of these cups. I think the better we get at it and the better the cups are, the longer that will be. We got to get away from branding everything because that takes the life down a little bit. Sorry. But you guys are branding our cups, so we're not taking that business away.
So, Peter, from a planning perspective in architecture, is there a trend that jumps out with you?
Yeah. I think last year we saw, in the last few years, we saw a lot of companies, if they didn't already have a sustainability commitment, they now have one. And they were starting to implement it. And we were starting to see the output of the results of that. And folks were starting to double down on it and really put the pen to paper on some of that stuff. And we were also seeing, we were asking questions around the impact of AI as it relates to like energy modeling and carbon transparency tools. 2025, I think we're really going to start seeing AI supercharging those tools, and we're really going to start seeing those design tools getting a lot fancier and faster and more comprehensive. I think that as it relates to sustainability commitments, frankly, we have an administration in the office that is challenging and discrediting climate change. And so, and defunding a lot of it. And so I think we're going to start seeing a lot of folks either triple down on sustainability or back out of it. And we're going to start seeing companies, corporations kind of go on one side of the table or the other, and we're going to see what that looks like moving forward. I think a trend is going to be for a lot of folks to defend and resist and do everything they can to keep those policies, those commitments in play because they're the right thing to do.
That's great. So you mentioned in your response there about carbon footprinting. You want to maybe lead off, because I got the feeling that in 2024, everybody was having to come out with carbon footprinting numbers, or it had to be top of the chart. What's your feeling about it today?
Yeah. Well, we can't get carbon tunnel vision. Sustainability is so much more than just carbon. I'll start with that. But as it relates to carbon accounting, it's a very important aspect of it. My team created a carbon calculator specifically for the signage and wayfinding world. It relates to an extent to some experiential graphics as well. And that's been great. We've been able to make informed, metrics-driven design decisions in real time internally as teams, and then report that information back to our clients and show them the value, and hopefully kind of talk them off the ledge a little bit as far as costing and stuff goes. We've had some great partnerships with folks like SuperGraphics and Creo, and sort of helping realize what that means, what those decisions, those design decisions mean, because so much in our world is the embodied carbon side of things, not as much the operational, yes, a little bit when we get into illuminated elements, but it really is the material selection. And so making sure that we're specifying and sourcing as responsible and healthy materials, not just from a carbon perspective, also indoor occupancy, human health, the gases and everything that those materials offset. And carbon accounting is just one of the ways that we can do that. But we can't count our way out of this. I mean, it's a big part of it, but we can't just stay focused on carbon, and we can't stay too focused on the numbers themselves. It's a big part of it, but there is so much more to it.
Christy, how about that same question?
I agree, and you can't change what you don't measure,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Like, so you need to measure
Yes.
to make goals. In my space, it becomes a Pandora's box, because one of the things about carbon accounting is then who's responsible for making the changes.
Yeah.
And in my world, there's any number of people and any number of boundaries you can talk about, because we have the stadium, we have an NFL team, we have an MLS team, an NWSL team, and we have concerts in and out. We have Supercross. Each one of them brings their own increase, decrease to our energy usage, our water usage, and even waste. We talk about how much waste comes out of the building per event, and Supercross, the recycling numbers outdo a Seahawks game. So it was a country concert. And so all of these pieces, and then who's responsible to, if we're talking about offsets or reductions, who is it? And so it can make the whole process stop when we get caught up in the numbers. But it also is super important for us to know. I mean, I can spout off that from 22 to 23, we reduced our electrical usage overall by 11% in our building. Some upgrades, mainly to our bowl lighting, helped that. But when you got into the nitty gritty of it, it was a 45% reduction per attendee year over year, which is a much different and a much bigger number. So again, to the point, what are we accounting for, and how do we say we have made a difference?
Yeah, well, I just want to add to that if I can.
Sure.
In my world, we're looking at environmental product declarations to extract the data to pump into these calculators to output the carbon, right? And so to your point, if that data isn't available, or those EPDs don't exist and they're not mandated, they are a lot more in Europe than the US, then there's no data to calculate. And that assumes that you have a way to calculate it. A lot of folks don't. And even the EPDs that do exist, most of them, the data is only credible up until A1 to A3, which is cradle to gate up in raw material extraction up until at least the factory floor. So what happens to it in transport to SuperGraphics? What happens to it when it's being fabricated? What happens to it during its life? Is it turned over? How often is it turned over? And then how do we quantify the waste at the end of life? And a lot of these EPDs just simply can't calculate that, or the data is unreliable. And so when we do carbon calculations, a lot of what we're saying is we were able to, within a certain range of margin of error, we were able to reduce at least this much embodied carbon, but there could be more, and there's a lot more to be desired, and we just currently have to kind of live with that. And so it's a challenge, and it goes back to my point that we can't focus solely on carbon accounting, because it does currently, and I think always to an extent, will have its limitations.
So just an editorial note here. I think that what you guys are talking about and representing here is what SuperGraphics is trying to do, which is trying to create a culture around metrics and go ahead and share this. And so for those of you that are attending this, you're getting an opportunity to witness one particular company's justification of their vision of how they want to act in the community. So it's pretty impressive. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're feeling is on carbon?
It's just good business. I mean, we went to electrical forklifts because, quite frankly, fuel usage was less, and the carbon footprint's great. Don't get me wrong, but it's just straight numbers. I mean, full solar on the buildings I own, because it was good business. We cut our energy bill in half, and the tax credits really made a difference. And we dropped, in our Cincinnati plant, we qualified for the Inflation Reduction Tax credits. And it was a decision that moved us forward on a certain you're looking just under $1.6 million. And what the efficient ways that would extract qualifying material. So it's just good business on mine.
So for those of you that are participating or on your journey on sustainability, asking this question starting with Steve, where did you learn how you wanted to take that journey? I mean, what was, because I mean, for the first time users out here, listening to you speak, sometimes it comes off like Greek, right? It's the vocabulary. You've got, I'm going to call it sustainable ease. And how do we get that dialogue for everybody to rise all boats?
I don't have a simple answer. For me, it's why throw the glass away when you can recycle the glass. 20s and late teens, go around and collect papers and sell them down at the junkyard. Put a wagon and all that. And just after the wheel was invented, but fire been invented for the first time. So all that being said, when I came in, I came in at a very different state than this. I mean, giving you some idea, I can tell you who the real players are in the first 10 episodes of The Sopranos, because I had to was doing business in New York, and it was memorable. Not enjoyable, but memorable. So it's from a different sort of thing, and at some level, I was always raised with the ethos of you want the world to be better when you leave than if you hadn't shown up. And I can't go beyond that. I can't explain it beyond that. But when I pass, I want the world to be a better place. And as is mentioned earlier, I'm not thrilled with some of the changes that have happened over the past few months, because I think it runs counter to what I believe. But had an election. Here we are. We're down the road. We got 4 years. We got to do the best we can and move forward. The thing that really I have found from a business perspective that really drives less carbon footprint and drives people in the direction are higher landfill rates. We have some of the highest landfill rates in the country here in the Pacific Northwest as we have in the Bay Area, which is one of them. And the recycling rates are significantly higher because the alternative disposal becomes much more palatable. You can hit your returns on investment for equipment much more rapidly as a result, as opposed to in East Texas, where I did business, is a $36 a ton landfill rate. I couldn't make anything work at Campbell Foods. Yeah, just throw the cans out. I can't touch that. So it's that sort of thing. That's something that will drive things in a better direction. It doesn't help me because I'm no fan of waste management. It's mainly the largest landfill operator in the country. They should raise their rates more.
So, Christy, what do you feel on this issue?
Learning.
Yeah.
So for me, it's industry, other industry professionals, and surrounding myself, and then tackling a problem and figuring out the solution, which is kind of what I've done over the course with our waste program at the stadium. I think it's asking questions. I'm kind of a pragmatist. I understand what we really want in sustainability, and I understand, especially in my industry, that that's not the best case is not always going to happen. I mean, reduce is the highest, on the hierarchy is reduce. But when you're asking 68,000 people to come into your home, there's not a lot of reduction that's happening. So where can we find the better to get toward the best? And that really comes from asking questions, from getting in the dirt, getting in the garbage, literally, and pushing the norms.
It's also not helping when you're designing some like 1.2 billion square feet of structure every year, right? Like Gensler is inherently contributing to the problem, and so we're trying to reduce that impact as much as possible. I think, to Steve's point, you gotta want it, and I think search within yourself for why it's important to you, and then chase after that, that curiosity. I think I learned a ton by challenging the norms and asking questions, asking my senior leadership, higher and higher up, and my colleagues and my friends and my parents and all my peers and all these people. Why are we doing that? Why can't we do this? What if we did that? How might that work? How can I get that resourced? And almost bringing an entrepreneurial spirit to it. And it's because it's kind of DIY at the end of the day. And you kind of just got to roll your sleeves up and dig into it and figure out a way to make it work. And if there's a will, there's a way, is what I've found. I think the more canned response to that question is Gensler has a ton of knowledge sharing and industry, education and webinars times to the nth degree. They tell them to put you to sleep, right? But all that's out there if you want it. There's social media, YouTube, news, and so many resources out there. If you want to look, you can find it. And also, I highly recommend any sort of professional accreditation, green accreditation. I think anything is better than nothing. I'm a big fan of LFA. It's my bias there, but I do think that International Living Future Institute really laid amazing groundwork for my understanding at a philosophical level before you even, strategically, before you even start coming up with solutions, understanding what the problem is and ways in which you can approach it before you start understanding what the tools and techniques are to actually implement it. So,
good response.
Yeah.
So if I'm a person attending this conference for the first time and I'm starting maybe on my journey, or I'm in a different phase of my journey, where do I go to learn or find? Where's your location? Because I'd like from each one of you to go ahead and give the audience a tip where they can find information. Here?
I can say if you're starting your journey on the waste side of it, and where does what you're producing or go, USGBC's True Zero certification is a great place to start. I took the certification, and there was things that I learned throughout that. I think the other is ingrain it in your conversations. Zach and I sat, and I mean, before and while I was the sustainability manager, I was also responsible for all the signage in the building, which is the interaction I had with SuperGraphics first. But then because I was the sustainability manager, those conversations grew, and we have changed some of the materials we're using in our building because of what they did to grow that in their industry, and then being able to implement it because there was a connection, right? I was the sign girl, but I was also the sustainability girl, and it really kind of brought that together. But you have to have those conversations to get to those places. You can't keep the information to yourself.
On the design side, AIA is a great place to start. American Institute of Architects. Obviously, there's a lot of like ground up and interior architecture knowledge and education, but a lot of it can be applied to the graphics and signage world, absolutely. And then SCGD, that's my plug for SCGD. There will be a lot of information forthcoming that the sustainability committee that I sit on is putting together, and that will be a great resource for all of us. It's a great place to start.
Steve, come on now, recycler. You know,
There's
people in the audience here that are wanting to get recycler hookups. How does it happen?
Well, we've got, I don't know, 50 videos on YouTube on our channel. So you can just Google that. If you really want to understand large quantities what goes on, we did one video that's called Global Shipping Loop. Talks about, you get close-ups of how the container ship vessels are loaded, and the rest is just an overview of the size of the industry and the rest of it. And size does matter. Leave that alone. Some anecdotes, so little time. But at any rate, so that's one way. It sometimes helps. Lawrence Livermore and Lawrence Berkeley's favorite tour was our junkyard in Oakland, because they could actually see their crap going through it and see how it was processed and why it had to be a certain way or not. You need volume, and the problem folks don't understand is when you're recycling, you're trying to take that sheet of paper and you're trying to put it in 20-ton lots that will be put in a manufacturing process and come out as tissue, as hand towels, paper tissues, whatever, which is really what printing and writing does. Or in the case of cardboard or your brown grades, it's going to come back as some form of liner board or medium or some container board. And so how do you take it from an individual level and scale it up to where it can be at a cost-effective level? And so when you're at small numbers and your small volumes, it's very difficult to attain that scalability unless you're willing to do the work and deliver it to the recycler, who will then put it together in larger lots. This business was 5 minutes to get in, it's a lifetime to get out. That's all I can tell you. And I'm going out of feet first.
I love what you said about go visit the junkyard.
Oh yeah,
immerse yourself in it. There's so much more than just websites. Go to the Bullet Center on Capitol Hill. They offer free tours. There's a living building community out on Lopez Island. If you want to make a weekend out of it, go schedule a tour and walk that. I don't even think you need to schedule a tour. Walk it. It's all around us, right? It's here at SuperGraphics, and I think seeing it in real life is a big part of it as well, not just experience.
One of the things that would be very good, understand that 20% of all the food that's been created in the United States or manufactured in the United States ends up as garbage. That's a lot. That's a big number, and we're all responsible for it. But seeing how that's handled, either a composting or a feed operation, because it'll go into cattle feed or, with the exception of meats and chickens and lamb, we're going to some sort of animal feed or some sort of ethanol facility for sugary liquids or alcohols. And seeing that and seeing the scale, helping our guys understand what the size of the challenge is for everyone.
Sounds great. So we're going to go to a little bit of a lightning round here, just kind of accelerate it a little bit. So Steve, give me your hot button on sustainable issues.
I hate plastic. I
Okay.
hate plastic. And I hate the plastic industry and the fossil fuel industry. They're all a bunch of big liars. There's just no.
You heard it here first.
Their numbers are full. Pardon my French. The numbers are full of shit. The people are full of shit, and they're paying off all the politicians. That's what I really think. Any other questions?
Really, really good for a lightning round. Christy, same
I
question.
can hear the beeps on the live stream.
Hi with me.
Mine is that I think, right or wrong, sustainability has gotten too politicized. And politicized. And we want the government, we want industries, we want people to do things about it, but we all have to take personal responsibility. And each of us took personal responsibility. It would start to move the needle on those things outside the carbon accounting.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Peter?
My hot button is when people say it's too expensive. It's bullshit. And there's ways to be smart about it. I think if you're not, it's expensive if you're not doing it right. Sure, there are more expensive options, but maybe a sheet of recycled acrylic is keep me honest on this career. Maybe a sheet of acrylic is more expensive. Recycled acrylic is more expensive than a virgin acrylic, but do you need to maintain that same thickness? Can you reduce the thickness down from a 1/2 inch to a 1/4 inch and make up the difference? And maybe actually doing that it's a cheaper option. And so there's ways, very simple ways, to get creative and be cost effective. You gotta want it.
Sounds good. Reed and I just came back from a conference, and the hot issue at that conference was EPR legislation. So we had a pre-call. Everybody's up to speed. Steve, what do you think on EPR legislation? And for those of you that this is a term that you haven't been exposed to, it's called extended producer responsibility. And so in theory, it's to gather enough funds to do big things.
You know, again, you come with paper or with metals, it's just not an issue. With food, it's really not an issue. You've got scaling, you've got the facilities in place. You come back down again to plastics. Plastics are designed to be light, flexible, and if they're cushioning, incredibly light and hard to break down. It's like cardboard on steroids. And so consequently, the cost of transportation and processing is so high that you've got to push that back on the manufacturers. We talked about this earlier. But the only way, because I do a lot of business with the food industry. There's nothing that touches plastic for shelf life. You go and buy a pre-made salad or vegetables or whatever, there's nothing that's going to extend that. Christy, you know that.
Yeah.
And so as a result, you've got to take it back to your basic chemistry. You've got to put up what amounts to a petroleum cracker, which is a $1 to $2 billion item that you're going to put in there and take it back down to the ethylenes, which is the building blocks of all the hydrocarbons. So you start with ethane and you move up to octane and so on. So
Steve, I've got your next video. It's a chemistry video.
I actually have a friend of mine I went to high school with that guy can roll. But I mean, the flexibility with hydrocarbons is you have something that can be a gas, and then you have an 18 or 19 chain carbon chain, which is your palm oil, which is at 50 degrees. At 50 degrees is a solid, and at 100 degrees is a liquid. I mean, it's that kind of thing. And then you add it, and you go to a chain of 50, and you have asphalt. And so it's so flexible, and there are permutations in that allow it to have very specific characteristics that are desirable for a particular use that may be very tiny, but when you mix them all together, it's impossible to do anything. But if you took it back to a cracker, the only thing you'd have to take out would be the polyvinyl chloride, the PVCs, because when you have a free chlorine atom, that's a poison, in case you didn't read about the First World War. So, and so that would be the one item that you would have to exclude, but you could put everything else in there, and that would work. All you need is a couple of billion.
Christy, what do you feel about EPR?
You know, I think eventually the customer is going to feel it, and so would we be better served to change personal behavior too? Like, because that's in the whole chain of things. We want to make somebody up here responsible, and it goes back to my hot button. We all need to take responsibility.
Totally. Behavior informs policy, which informs behavior. It's circular, right? But I can't speak too much on the policy itself. I immediately never heard of it until 2 days ago. But my point of view in general is that any pro-sustainability policy is a good policy. It may not be the right one, but we shouldn't let progress get in the way of perfection. If that policy if that legislation didn't exist, we wouldn't be up here talking about it and maybe getting to a better decision or the right decision later down the line. So I think it moves the needle forward, and in that sense, generally, I'm in support of it. But I can't speak to the specifics of it necessarily either.
Thank you to the panel. I want to open this up at this point to have questions with you.
So I have two for Christy. What's Supercross?
Supercross is motorbikes. So
Okay.
they bring in dirt and fill our field and create a track and
Okay.
race at our facility.
Way
They just-
cool.
It's way cool. They just drink more.
And you found that community recycled more.
I don't know that they recycle more, they drink more. So it creates more recycling. So in our facility, really quick about our facility, we sort all of our waste on site so that we make sure that the streams that are going out are in the correct spaces. So when I say it created more, it's not that they recycled any more in the right thing. It was that they drank more. Them and country family.
And then these cups, do they leave them behind and you wash them, or is it like we take them home and bring them back the next time we come?
Leave them behind, and they go
Wash.
off site to a wash hub. Is the new model, because none of our facilities have the capacity to
Second
wash.
use.
So they go off, wash, sanitize, and come back to us.
That must break down the plastic. You said like 20 times.
There is that, and again, when it has stuff on it, there's a lot of things. It's so new, and it's one of the reasons we've been slower to adopt. We're letting other people, like to be first in a lot of things. This one I want to see, because there's a lot of studies out there, but they're very small studies, and so we'll see. The model we're looking at, it's a much higher, thicker plastic that I think will last a lot longer. Again, we're looking at it being a fan upgrade in our club spaces, not just a sustainability project.
But the hot water of cleaning them can break it down and make it
There is a whole science, and I can't speak to it, but there are groups that are out there studying and setting policies and all kinds of things about reuse, because again, 5 years ago it wasn't something that was really happening, and now it's happening at scale. And so they're writing and learning all about how you can wash at low temperatures with the right to get it sanitized and make it a product we can use again in the stadium.
And then for Peter, so when you say accreditation, like, who are you talking about? That you're like, oh, well, go ahead, get accredited in this with this
Yeah, so like
program or another.
Yeah, so for example, International Living Future Institute, the other one's based out of the Bullitt Center. They are the governing body of the Living Building Challenge. So if you're pursuing a green building certification for your building, just like a LEED, right? Become a LEED Platinum or something. But they also offer a the certification for you as a professional. So not
So EGD designer.
yes, you can absolutely. There's no prereq or anything like that. You can enroll and go through the modules, go through the course, take a test, you go visit sites, you read some books. It's fun, and you pay a fee and you walk away with some letters that you can put after your name and a bunch of knowledge that you can bring back to your team.
Can we add on to that? Because Reed, do you want to answer this one?
Well, we'll recap this via social for everyone because this is the first time I'm hearing about this, and I think this is me personally. So anyway, that'll come back, and so everybody can have that link as far as if they're interested.
It's
Do you want to
it's
talk
all
a little bit about your certification for SGP?
Well, I would say that you know, our journey, if I was to back up just a tiny bit, our journey has really been facilitated by peers and partners. And so, you know, Steve is a partner, okay, so vendor partner in this case.
I'm sorry.
And so that's the one I like to go to. And Steve and I could go on forever about plastics and lack of public partner funded infrastructure to manage the recycling space. Okay,
You drilled down for a year on that.
That's my hot button. Okay, but you know, that's where I get educated. I get educated from Steve, educated from Sonoma Graphics, who supplies us with these paper products, and I try to reach either downstream, sometimes upstream, and try to upstream from our client base and downstream from our suppliers, and try to get educated that way. And the peer group is sort of where Brian and I were in January. We're just here, other printers. What are the best practices they're taking? That's sort of what we get with SGP, the Sustainable Green Printing Partnership. That's just kind of one big best practices. We're sharing ideas of what we think are best in the printing space for sustainability, along with a very significant and regimented data gathering process, so we can have the metrics. And with the metrics, we can define it and then try to prove it.
And with the nice thing about SGP is that it's third party. So it's something where it's third party validated. It's not like you're creating a mark and you're saying you're sustainable. I paid $5,000.
all of the LFA, LEED, EMVSP, WELL, Fitwell, BREEAM, all of those accreditations are also third-party accredited. Yeah. So, and it's great too from a, it's the types of, if you want to work on a living building challenge project, those to reach that certification, you have to have at least one LFA on the project. So, for example, when I got my LFA, I was then immediately considered to be on a project that was pursuing the material metal certification. So there's, not only is it interesting and helpful, but it can position you to more opportunities and business development too. And so align yourself with one or more of those accreditations of the American recommendation that strategically serves you and your companies, your firms needs as well.
How many companies would pay for their staff person to go through that?
Oh, I think a lot.
Like
I mean, I don't know.
Took your time.
Gensler does, but
That's a lot.
Yeah, it benefits the companies, right? I mean,
Because then you're an informed staff member, which can add to their certifications whenever they go on RFQs.
and positions that firm to be, or that company, that group to be considered for those types of projects as well. There's a business development.
And I think it also has another benefit, which is that it talks to the ethos of the business owners, right? Which are the fact that, you're either in sustainability, it's not like you're on the line all the time. You're either in the left side or the right side. So you're 100% in or you're 100% out, right? So
It's a shared language.
yeah. Questions, more questions.